This is the notes for 1.4 using IQR to compare samples. Today we're going to be looking at box and whisker plots, and this is something that shows the distribution of values in a data set, and it's separated into 4 equally sized groups. It's constructed from a 5-number summary of the data, and these are our 5 numbers. Okay, the important thing I want to highlight first is that it's 4 equally sized groups. So if this is 100% of my data, and I'm splitting it into 4s, that means each group is 25%. So even though this box looks small, there's still the same amount of data as over here. So if there's 3 people that had between 50 and 60 right here, there's also only 3 people over here. So we can't tell looking at this whether 100 people took our survey or 1,000, but what I do know is that 25% of them answered something between this range. 25% of them answered here, 25% of them answered here, and then 25% here. Okay. How we achieve those 25% is we find the median first, and then we find the median again. So we find the middle of both those 2 sides of the middles. How we plot it is by these 5 numbers. Okay, so let's start with the minimum is my smallest number in my list. So in this example, it was 34. So they put a dot at 34 on their number line. Then they went to the median, which is the middle, and they found that the middle number was 62. And so they drew a line to split their data in half. Okay, this median is also sometimes called quartile 2. Then they found the middle of that lower middle, and that's the lower quartile. That's sometimes called Q1. Okay, so we're going to start with our high and a low. After we find the middle, we're going to find the middle again of the lower half, and then the middle of the upper half is what we call our upper quartile. And again, that completes our box when we draw that line, and that's quartile 3. The last number on your list, the extreme, is the maximum. So the highest answer someone gave in this survey was 89, and that's what we also call quartile 4 sometimes. Okay, so since I have 100% all of my data, and it's split into 4 groups, each of them is 25%, that's where I get quartile 1, 2, 3, and 4. The lower 25%, the middle 25 and 25, sometimes called the middle 50%, that's the interquartile range when we flip it over here in a second, and then the upper 25% of my data. Okay. So let's go ahead and flip it over. We're going to try an example. In our example, we're going to make a box and whisker plot from the shoe sizes of the people in your class. Okay, so obviously our class is going to be different each day. For right now in our notes, I'm just going to give you a sample of data. There we go. All right, so I have 3, 3.5, 5, 6, 7, 10, 10.5, 11, 11.5, 12, 12.5, 13, and 14. So if you were to do this data yourself, your number would look different. You could also have more or less people. But for right now, go ahead and copy mine so we have an example to look off of. Okay. All right, we're going to start with the minimum, also known as my lower extreme. That is the smallest number on my list, and that's 3. So I'm going to go and put a dot here. That's my minimum, which is 3. On the other side of my box and whisker is my maximum. My upper extreme is the highest number on my list. Okay. When I get done, this box should not look symmetrical, meaning everything should not be equally spaced. There's going to be some where it's bigger and some parts where it's closer together. So to graph 14, I need to make it a number line. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I just went 2 numbers above there to give myself plenty of space. Okay. But depending on your data, again, your number line could look different. For me, the smallest was 3 and the highest was 14. So I needed to make sure my number line included those 2 numbers. Next, we're going to find the median. So the median is that middle number. 3 and 14 cancel. 3 and 3.5, 12.5 and 5, 12 and 6, 11.5 and 7, 11 and 10. I'm left with my median is 10.5. So on my graph, that's the middle part of my box. I'm going to go ahead and put a line there. That's my median of 10.5. If I had to find an average, meaning I worked all the way to the middle and then I had two numbers left, I would then include this half in my lower and this one in my upper. But since we found a median and it was the true middle, we're going to go ahead and cross it off, and we're not going to include that in our lower quartile and upper quartile. Okay. To find the lower quartile, I need to do the median again, but of my lower half. So 10.5 was the true median, so we're going to start with 3 and 10 canceling, 3.5 and 7, and then I'm left with 5 and 6 are there in the middle. So to find my lower quartile, since I had two numbers, I'm going to add them together, push enter in my calculator, and then divide by 2. The average should be 5.5. So I left out my median because it was only one number. If it was two scenarios like this, then I would include them in the upper and the lower, but I'm not going to share that number. So I crossed off the median and I found my median again. So 5.5 is the lower part of my box. I'm going to put that as a line. Okay. Right down, here's my median. That one was 10.5. Okay. And then my upper quartile, the upper part of my data is the median again. We're leaving out 10.5, and we're going 14, 11 cancel, 13, 11.5. So we're trying to find between these two numbers. So with our calculators, 12 plus 12.5, hit enter, and then divide by 2. Between 12 and 12.5 should be 12.25. So on my number line, just do your best guess. I would approximate mine to be about there. Okay, so we found the lower, which was the minimum. The maximum was my upper, that 14. And then we found the middles, and then the middles of those middles. Now my last steps is just to finish that box. So I'm going to connect this over, connect that over. My whiskers connect to my lower and upper extremes. Okay, I'm also going to write a reminder again to myself. So this is 25% of my data, 25%, 25%, and 25%. So if I was trying to make some conclusions, we could say half of our data, so the middle, is more to the right. So we have a lot more numbers condensed here in my shoe sizes of 10 to 14, where they're more spread out from 3 to 10. Or I could look at each individual box and whisker too. So this whisker is the shortest, so that I have most condensed data between 12 and 14, versus the most spread out data would be here. Okay, keep in mind, just looking at this, I don't know that I only surveyed 11 people. Okay, based off of this,